So let's say I'm interested in people's travel habits changes because of the COVID-19. And in this case, what I would do is I would ask those people who have traveled a lot before COVID-19 and those people who are now forced to stay at home to be safe. Well, I would ask these people, and in this way, I would have a questionnaire with which I would like to filter my people who will take part in my qualitative research. And my questionnaire would contain elements where I would just be based on three questions. I would ask them first. First question: have you traveled a lot before COVID-19? And if they said yes, they traveled a lot, then it's okay. I can include them into my qualitative research. If they say no, they haven't traveled at all, then I might not want to include them because there is no changes for them, or not so significant changes for them. So applying this filter questionnaire is important because of this, because you know exactly what kind of target group you would like to ask and would like to research. So this is one thing that you have to be aware of. And what I already mentioned is that there should be no personal relationship between the participants and the interviewer. Well, in most cases, this is not the case, so we cannot make sure that we don't know everyone, because usually if you would like to invite somebody for a focus group discussion, that person has to be very devoted to you because they have to spend at least 1 hour with you answering your questions. So this is sometimes not the case. But in terms of, let's say, thesis research and market research, it's okay if you know the participants, but you have to reflect on how you try to make this effect of knowing each other less. Okay, you have to avoid professional group members, meaning that there are some people who work for market research companies and they take part in different researches. And they also take part in different qualitative research and they get money for it. And there are these people who get paid for participating in these research types. And of course, because they get paid, it means that the more they go to, the more they get paid. Well, in that case, you might want to avoid these people because they might be in your focus group just because they get money. Probably they are not even interested in the research topic, or they are not even influenced by your research topic, meaning that, let's say, I would participate in a research where they research doctors and I say, okay, I'm a doctor, but I'm not. So these people can also apply, unfortunately. Okay, if you are conducting more than one focus groups, then I think it would be great to have the same person conducting all the focus group discussions, because after one or two you already have some experience of the things that you have seen. You have the experience of the first group discussion and the second, and for the third you will have such an experience that nobody else would have. So I think it would make sense to conduct the focus groups yourselves. Okay, advantages and disadvantages of focus groups. Well, the same ones apply as before for the triad and the in-depth interviews, with some modifications. Well, here it especially applies that if you have a person who speaks a lot, then your whole focus group dynamics is screwed. But in this case, what you can do is somehow try to moderate the events. Try to make some people speak if they are not so willing. Try to give them the word yourself, that okay, could you please also tell us some examples, and this way they might feel included in the conversation. It is also expensive because you have to conduct it yourself and it might take a lot of time to do it, and it requires an expert, maybe an expert also who is much more an expert than when you are doing an in-depth interview, because with in-depth interviews it is much easier to deal with one person, but to deal with 6 to 12 people it's much harder. But of course the same thing applies here, that the more you do, the better you will get. And you have the influence of group members, not just one member, but all of them. And especially the case applies when there are members of your group who don't like speaking in front of other people, and they might be willing to tell you their answers in person. And the other thing is a big disadvantage, is it's very hard to arrange because you need 6 to 12 people at the same time, at the same place, discussing one certain topic. I've done lots of focus group interviews myself, and one time we were researching the image of the university, and we've conducted more than 10 focus group discussions. Well, for each of them to organize, at least it took 1 week, so it was quite long research, because to get people at the same place at the same time is extremely hard, I think. Okay, processing the data is also very hard, because once again you will have to record it, you will have to type it down, and you will have to analyze it in a certain way. So I think it's extremely hard, and especially if you are doing more than one focus group discussions, it means that you have to somehow synthesize all those information into one big research result. But on the other hand, you can get lots of information at the same time, not just from one person, but 6 to 12 people, and those unexpected information can also come up that you have never even thought of. So there might be some aspects of this that you might not have thought of otherwise, maybe in an in-depth interview. But it came up because there were 6 to 12 people who saw things from a different angle or from a different viewpoint. And group members can also motivate each other, so it can have another effect that they don't just discourage each other, but they can also encourage each other to talk. Okay. Well, there is another one we have to look at. So we looked at in-depth interviews, triad interviews, focus group discussions. Well, usually, if people don't come, or not so many people come to your focus group, because it also happens, you invite 12 people and only 4 of them show up. Well, in this case, what we call it, if there are only 3, 4, or 5 people, we call it a mini group interview. So this is our 4th type. So if you don't manage to get 6 to 12 people, then we call it a mini group interview. In this case, in a mini group interview, you have at least 4 or 5 people, and you want to get their opinion. Well, if you didn't intend it to be a focus group discussion, but you especially wanted a mini group interview, usually it's because you are interested in experts' opinion in the topic. So it cannot only be just an accidental focus group which didn't manage to become a focus group but a mini group interview. But if you intend to be 3 or 4 people in this discussion, then usually it's because you want to ask experts' opinion on a topic. So sometimes they're also called expert interviews. Well, in this case, the group members usually have the same attributes. You ask people with the similar interests, similar knowledge than before. And these sessions could also be quite long, depending on your respondents, but usually they are quite long. Hard to organize, once again, because of your participants. It's still very hard to get 3 or 4 people at the same time at the same place. And there is also risk because with the same, or it's quite the same to, or similar to the focus group discussions, is sometimes they might not be willing to tell you anything, or they feel threatened by the other 2 people and they don't feel like talking. So this can also happen with it. But on the other hand, as you are the moderator, it's much easier to moderate 3 or 4 people than 12 people. So it might be easier, or it might be easier for the moderator to moderate this. And it can also be shown how people process or create their own opinion, how the formation of the opinion is made. And another form, which is basically, could be the form of interviews as well, if you would like to invite people, let's say for a focus group discussion or for a mini group interview, doesn't matter, you can apply this last methodology, which is called creative groups. Well, creative groups basically can be in a form of focus group or not an in-depth interview, because there are usually more than 2 people, so small groups. So you can apply these creative groups if you would like to get some creative result at the end of the discussion. So that's why creative groups are usually applied when your company wants to sell a new product and you have the new product concept, but you don't have a product name, and you would like to find maybe a new brand for the product. So in this case, you invite your experts from the marketing department and the products department, and together you organize a creative group where they can discuss their ideas, discuss what they would like to see or what they would like to use in the topic. So they can have a lot of time, actually, not just 1 hour, but maybe 3 4 hours or even a day, where they can discuss their ideas and they can come up with new solutions. So creative groups are that's why very very good ideas, but could be very lengthy, very expensive, because you have to provide them with not just the place and the time, but also provide them with some tools and equipment with which they can think, with which they can maybe create new products, new brands, new ideas. So it requires a lot of equipment, as you can see. But on the other hand, you can get some great original ideas that are free for you to use, especially if you ask people from your own company. And basically, you can use the creativity of your people. Google does this actually on each Friday. If I remember correctly, you have this 80-20 rule that in 20% of, I think it's 80-20. So in 20% of your work time or work hours, you can think of anything that you would like to. And usually these are on Fridays. So on Fridays, you are free to come up with new ideas, come up with new inventions. And I remember when we were at Google, they showed us some projects that the people were creating on these Fridays, and on this 80-20 rule, that they created the Loon project, which tries to bring internet to everyone at each segment of the world. So they have lots of projects coming out of these creative groups. But of course, it is quite complex selection process that they have to manage. It's expensive, and the results are basically hard to process because there are thousands of good ideas, and how do you decide which one to choose? So it's very very hard to process the results themselves. But on the other hand, you can get results otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So I love to call this method also as some kind of a co-creation. So because you're co-creating the ideas with others. So this is not just your idea. Maybe you have an idea, but others are also trying to manage and work on your idea a little bit further. These were some qualitative methods that you have as tools for your own research. They haven't looked at all of them, but at least you got an insight into what could be done, and I hope it will help you with your own homework exercises and homework projects. I hope it provided at least some insight, and the slides could be found on CoSpace. So you might want to download it and look at it. Maybe there is everything. I try to put as much information on it as possible, so they are not the best slides to present, but at least you can get some information from them. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell you today. Be safe and stay at home. Goodbye guys, see you next week.